What is going on? Welcome to the Dylan Talks Tone Just Gonna Say It podcast. Whoa, looks like we need to do not disturb this computer. Thanks for coming and hanging out with us on this here Tuesday afternoon. Yeah, it's been that kind of week for me. We've had a lot going. Obviously, you can see we're in a new space. We have moved. This is the new Dylan Talks Tone studio. I hope you like it. You probably saw it in yesterday's video, and you're going to see a lot more of it. And we're going to show you some more of that stuff too. So, welcome to the Dylan Talks Tone studio. Today, we're going to talk about how tone has changed over the last decades. The title of it, obviously, they don't make tone like they used to. I want to know from you right away. So go ahead and get in the comments right away. If you have evolved how you, let's say, if you, I feel like there's a bird against the window. If your tone has evolved over time, or are you using the same exact stuff, the same exact sounds, the same exact tones that you've been using your entire life of playing guitar? I went through a bunch of websites and tried to get a feel for some of the trending gear and some of the stuff that is, popular and going on right now. And I wrote down a bunch of stuff. Some stuff's kind of staying the same, but a lot of stuff is changing. And I think it has to do with how we make music now. So we'll talk about that. I think it's really kind of cool to think about those things. Before we get going in all of that, please do me a favor, go to Dylan Talks Tone. We don't really have a sponsor for this here podcast. So DylanTalksTone.com, I'll just self-sponsor it if you want pickups. And stay tuned to Dylan Talks Tone because we are expanding a bunch of stuff. I think you're going to dig it now that we have room to do it. So stay tuned for that as well. Also, new apparel. This shirt right here, the Play or Die shirt, is available over there on the Dylan Talks Tone website. We're obviously back to work making videos, and we took last week off making the move. And so we're back to work. We're making a bunch of P90s today, making a bunch of humbuckers tomorrow. So we're back to cranking now. So that's pretty cool. We got a bunch of new cool stuff coming at Dylan Talks Tone. For updates on what's going on around here, I mean, you're just seeing one corner of a lot of work that we've been putting into this place lately, and new possibilities for Dylan Talks Tone. But if you are a Patreon member or a YouTube member with a little join button down there, you should have been seeing over the last couple of weeks a bunch of updates, lots of changes for us, and so pretty stoked about it. So I'm pretty excited for all of these things, and I hope that you are able to share them with me as well. So how has your tone changed? Let's talk about it. I'll tell you how mine has changed. Well, I'm going to tell you how I think it has changed in general. It's interesting because when people watch our videos, you can kind of tell in the comments every once in a while, there's going to be somebody who's like, you don't play clean enough. You're using too many effects. I can't tell what the guitar is actually doing. And I kind of laugh at that because that's how we play, right? Like, I personally don't view the guitar as this purest form of like one-dimensionalness. Now, I'm not going to lie. If I listen to Stevie Ray Vaughan, Dirty Pool, Tin Pen Alley, and I say, that is like the purest clean tone of a Strat, sounds freaking amazing. It's not totally clean, but you know what I mean. You listen to Slash with a Les Paul and a Marshall. You listen to there's certain guitar tones over time that are just like, they are the sound, right? The Les Paul and the Marshall, the Tele and the AC30, the Strat and the Twin, like various combinations that we know and love from old music, really. But over time, I think a lot of people, a lot of guitar players have found, especially younger ones, have found that the guitar is a musical instrument, right? Like it's not just a single thing. It's an instrument that can be used for many other things. And so using it as a platform for a soundscape means that you have somebody like Matt Bellamy from Muse, for example, who makes all kinds of crazy noises and all kinds of various things. And of course, alternate tunings and more strings, 8 strings, 7 strings, all that kind of stuff. Um, and then you get into the praise and worship folks who use like crazy delays and shimmers and all this kind of stuff. They basically make their guitars sound like keyboards, um, loosely termed, of course. And we have all of these possibilities that you can make all these sounds with the guitar. And I think not only that, the application of how we play now has changed, right? We talk about amps a lot. You go from your big stack of Marshalls to a little pedal that does everything that a regular Marshall can do, but you can put it in your backpack. So those kind of things. And yes, I realize that there are tonal differences and there are folks that can't accept new technology and various things like that. I get that. And I understand why they don't want to. There's certain things that I don't want to give up either about a tube amp, for example. However, the application has changed. And so these things are here. But I was listening to the radio the other day, or not to the radio. See, here I go talking vintage. I was in the car, probably listening to Apple iTunes or whatever, Apple Music, in the car. And, I was just kind of listening to a song on like the modern rock station and flipping forward and listening and then flipping forward and then listening, and you've got, your Greta's on Fleek and stuff like that like copy Led Zeppelin, basically a Led Zeppelin cover band. Don't at me. And other than that though, a lot of this new stuff is really good, but it's not the same. I think people think that new music is terrible, but it's fine. It's great, but they're using the tools differently. And so that's what made me think, are you exploring and what are you using to make sounds? Or are you trying for a particular vintage style tone, or are using that vintage style tone as a basis? No wrong answers here. This is literally, when I came up with this subject, I was like, I'm just going to ask you all and we're just going to talk about this. And then I'm going to show you some of what's going on sales wise, in the various areas of guitar gear that we think about. As I grab a iced coffee sip. Let's see. I'm glad they don't. I appreciate the old stuff, but okay, so we're still talking about technology, and let's see. Hang on, I got to get down to the bottom. And I've evolved in pickups and speakers, not so much in pedals. That may be next. Very interesting. Okay. So that's cool because, pickups and speakers, to me, that's the main part of the voice and that's the basis of it. And I can understand why people, want to understand the purity of what a good pickup is. Obviously, that's what I do. And speaker interaction. I don't use speakers a lot because I play direct a lot. So that's different. I do play with more speakers now because I have a place where I can do that. But yeah, cool. Over the eons, I've tried many different kinds of picks. All right. Okay. My current pick is the V-Pick Ghost Pick. That is a cool pick. I 100% agree. I did a video with V-Pick one time and man, their stuff is really cool. I really like it. Let's see, JC40. If I wanted clean, I'd play my Martin. I love it. Let's see. Went to smaller wattage amps and ditched a lot of pedals once I realized that most of my tone was actually in my fingers. It's interesting, Scott. We encourage people a lot. You've followed the channel for a while. You know that we encourage people a lot to just basically take, I've got this Princeton here. And my favorite combo is just a single pickup guitar into a Princeton, and you just turn it up and you learn how the guitar works. And then you can do anything from there. Then you can make all the sounds you want once you understand how to make those sounds. Um, I'm trying let's say I'm trying whatever gear looks interesting and I still sound like me. I get that. I get that. I'm using smaller amps and more pedals. Okay. That's cool. Question for you guys from Jose. He says, rhythm guitar playing humbucker 90, cleanest guitar tone amp suggestion. So here's the trick with that. And the reason I brought that question up there is because we keep talking about smaller amps. So in tube amp land, smaller, less powered amps mean that you're never going to actually get clean with a hot humbucker or a P90. So I've got this Princeton, okay? And the Princeton is, what are they, 12 watts? With a hot P90, like what's in my SG Junior, it's very hard to get a clean sound out of it because no matter what you do, that pickup's going to be hitting that amp pretty hard. The thing is that most folks are going to some sort of digital technology now where they can play with all of that stuff and play with. So here's what ends up happening. You end up having to have a high wattage amp, probably 40 watts, 50 watts, and then don't turn it up very loud so that it stays clean. And then that hot pickup hits that amp, it doesn't push it into compression. Here's the problem. Did my camera just move? This darn thing. It did. Okay. Here's the problem is that when you try to go to a smaller amp, in tube amp world anyway, then you end up with that issue. You end up with overdriving that small amp. Now, you could go get a Katana 50, and because of all the power scaling and because of the way digital technology, and that's actually a solid state class AB push-pull transistor deal, but that's neither here nor there for this conversation. When you use digital technology, you can get around that. So then you can use a physically small amp, mimic a larger amp, and still stay clean, which is something that can happen. I will try anything, and I usually end up with a dirty tone through an amp pedal pickup that you're using. Let's see. I haven't spent as much time playing with effects as you can spend more time adjusting than actually playing. My tone has changed due to more playing with the fingers than with using a pick. That's interesting. I feel that because I do that a lot with an acoustic guitar. I'll have a pick sitting on the couch next to me, and I'll put it down and I'll pick it up and I'll put it down and I'll pick it up. Most of the time with an acoustic guitar, that's typically the way I roll with that. Let's see. Rob F., you only been playing for 2.5 years. Changes were P90 on humbucker guitars, reverb and delay. Cool. So there is some exploration happening here. I love this. Much of the new tech is cool and does what it is supposed to do. Much of it can be used in the place of old tech. My issue is learning curve. I can't just pick up and play until I learn it. You know, I think that used to be a bigger problem, the learning curve thing. I think the learning curve thing is getting better. And we'll get into that here in a minute. Let's see. Isn't Fricker sort of right when then in the context of digital amps that it doesn't really matter what your pickup is? Just use the lowest one pickup you can. And no, he's wrong about that. So with high gain stuff, yeah, I suppose but I still think he's wrong about that. No, your pickup still really matters with digital stuff. Absolutely. And power scaling still matters. Understanding the scaling of the power as it goes through the amp is important. That still has to happen. And the voltage that you send from the guitar to the amp with the pickup is still the basis of everything. What you do with it when you process it is a lot more variable with a digital product, and it is a lot more shapeable, and you can do more with it. But the baseline of all guitar tone is how your hands hit the strings and how the electricity gets made. End of story. Well, the setup, the mechanical set, but we're talking about electronic part of this. How the voltage is made and what frequencies are made by the pickup and at what amplitudes each frequency. Because, we're not talking about a perfect sine wave here. We're talking about this crunchy looking, boxy looking, weird signal, right? So resonant peak and amplitude as it leaves the pickup, the amount of electricity, the amount of voltage that it makes, and what shape that voltage is absolutely shapes everything else. Because if it's not there, you can't make it. And if it's there, you can only do so much with it. So a digital product allows you to do more than a basic tube amp, and it gives you a lot more flexibility. But the pickup is still the basis of it, 100%. Yeah, 100%. I have a Boss Katana, and it will not clean up cheap pickups, but most of it. Oh, I missed all of that. Let's see. As I've downsized, I've settled on the cleanest amp worth playing. Cool. Muddy isn't good ever. 100%. Absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. Cool. So we are getting a bunch of, this is fun. We are learning a bunch. I love learning about all this. Fender Twin Reverb, dude. Yeah. If you can play loud, you can use a Fender Twin Reverb. Okay, so here's what I did. Hang on. I'm sliding down in my chair here. Still trying to get comfortable with this new setup. I took a bunch of notes. I went to some of the big music retailers. You can check out a bunch of this stuff at the Sweetwater link in the description below. That does help out the channel. Thank you very much if you do that. So let's talk about guitars. When it comes to actual guitars, not gear, but actual guitars, I feel like, according to some of the biggest retailers, and I went and looked at a few of them, the most popular guitars right now, when it says, what's trending, what's the most popular, what's selling the most, that kind of thing, it's pretty traditional still. The PRS Silver Sky is way up there. The PRS SE line in general is way up there. So your DGT, your Silver Sky SE, which is interesting. So that tells me that a good quality humbucker guitar, but still relatively affordable, under $1,000. That's pretty cool. Same thing with a Strat style guitar that is relatively affordable but very good quality, being the Silver Sky. That's really cool. Epiphones are hot right now. Epiphones are the good ones, like the Kirk Hammett one's pretty hot right now. The those ones that are $1,000 to $1,500 depending. Everybody said that that was crazy that they should be that expensive, but those are actually the most popular ones right now. And those are the ones that are the most on back order. I tried to order a Dave Grohl, and everybody says June. My guy at Sweetwater says June. My guy at Zounds says June. It's crazy. You can't even get one. And people are starting to get them. It's just they're that sold out. So these fancy Epiphones are really hot right now. But when we think about that, what that means is that we're trying to get a vintage style guitar, a very traditional style guitar, uh, in an affordable package, right? So in an import package that makes sense, but is still really good quality. That, I mean, I totally get it, which is really fascinating. Um, and then the other guitars that are really popular as well is the Gibson Les Paul, an actual Gibson Les Paul, a Gibson SG, Fender American Ultra, Fender American Vintage, and the Sonic series at the complete opposite end. So when we think about they don't make tone like they used to, we're using the same guitar. So the guitar isn't where the adventure is, it sounds like. You know, the guitar is not where the exploration, the experimentation is. It seems to be in all the other stuff, which we'll get to in a minute. But I wanted to establish that the guitars are kind of staying the same, which is really interesting to me. When you look at the biggest retailers, you know, there's a lot of 8-string stuff. There's a lot of multi-scale stuff, but I think those are still relatively nichey in comparison to the more traditional stuff. And the bigger brands are what are selling the most. So a lot of people give me a lot of flack for talking about that, but the legacy of the larger brands does make sense. It does make sense, and they are selling the most. One of the reasons we can justify having multiple guitars is the differences in signals coming from a variety of pickups. The Epiphones with burst buggers are a stellar signal. They are. They're very cool. Yeah, I even called my guy at Gibson and I was like, dude, can you get me one of these things? And he's like, I don't know, man. It's like this whole thing right now, trying to get one of these. And I've been waiting for an email. I just checking my email again. Nope, I don't see it yet. Nope. Still nothing. I cannot get myself one of these DGT or one of these Dave Grohl guitars. It's funny. It's funny the amount of people that say they don't like Dave Grohl, but you can't get your hands on one of these guitars. It's kind of interesting. Okay, cool. So now let's look at model. Let's look at amps. Okay. On the trending and bestseller, etc., there was only 2 tube amps. A little Mesa Boogie, like a small one, which speaks to the small amp trend that you all were talking about. It seems that everybody's trending smaller. And then the other tube amp was actually a Blues Junior, which is weird because we don't ever talk about Blues Juniors anymore. And Blues Juniors, I don't know if y'all remember, but Blues Juniors for a while, I would say in the, I don't know, the late, like from 2008 to maybe 2009 to 2015 were hot. Everybody had a Blues Junior. I had one. I know tons of people that had them. And then there was like all the mods you went and did and made them. I did that thing where I took it apart and made the bias variable, and you did all these mods and the Cannabis Rex speaker, and everybody had Blues Juniors. And then I haven't heard about him for quite a while. Like I haven't heard anybody talk about a Blues Junior for, I don't know, 5 years probably. But they're one of the trending tube amps that are going on right now. Other than that, the trending amplifiers were the Neural DSP, the Fender Tonemaster Pro, which is the floorboard pedal version of the Fender Tonemaster, the Helix, all the Helixes. So the Helix Stomp, the Helix HX Stomp, the Helix LT, the Helix, that whole line of line 6 stuff. Interestingly, the Catalyst 100 and Catalyst 60, which I really liked. I had a Catalyst 100 for a while. I really liked that amp, and that was not in that list. The Katana 100 was in that list, though, which for most people, I think the Katana 100 is a better amp. And if you want to get good clean sounds, you can get good clean sounds from a Katana 100 if you set it right. What I like about the Katana is it acts like a tube amp in the respects that when you stack gain and when you push the amp, it acts master volume versus preamp volume and that sort of stuff. It works like it should. It doesn't act like a digital amp, if that makes sense, because it's not. It's not a digital amp. The effects are digital, but it's not a digital amp. So I really like that. So yeah, that's really interesting. So now, I would have thought a Hot Rod Deluxe would be popular, but it isn't. Why? Because it's heavy and it's big and it's tubes, and nobody wants that anymore because we don't want to haul that crap around, which is interesting. I think the Fender GTX 100 is better than the Katana. That is an interesting take, sir. That's the first time I've ever heard that. I'm interested to know what you like about that. I have not played one enough to have an opinion on the GTX 100. I do think that it has more effects and stuff, right? It has more of the digital side. But I don't know how the amp part of it is, which is what I think is so good about a Katana, is the actual amplifier. I don't care so much about the effects side of it, but the amplifier side is really, really good. Let's see. Both Blues Juniors and Mesas are looked down upon by amp techs who have to fix them. The Fenders like to burn up, and Mesas are difficult to work on. Yeah, so Rob, the reason is because they did not the Fenders didn't have adjustable bias, and so the tubes would run really hot tube bias, and so there was that guy's name, Bill somebody. Used to be able to get this mod kit from this guy named Bill. I can't remember. I don't even know if he's doing it anymore, but it was like $30 in parts, and he would send it to you, and then you could do it yourself, or you could send your board in and he would do it, and you could adjust the bias on your amp and it would never burn up after that. But that's why, is because it had a fixed bias, and you had to drill 3 holes in the circuit board, cut out a resistor, and then solder in like a variable resistor, and then use a meter to adjust the voltage, and it was always way too high, so you would adjust it down. We did all this stuff. It took like an hour and a half to do this little conversion, and then it was fine. Then it never blew up. It never blew. It was awesome. That was a great amp, actually. Let's see. Okay, so the GTX 100 is basically a DSP with a Class D power amp. So that's what most of this stuff is now, and so that makes sense. That makes sense. So, but here's the thing about that. That's an actual digital modeler. I want to do a video about this. There's a difference between a tube amp, obviously. Then we have a hybrid amp, which has like a solid state front end, like a solid state preamp, and a tube power amp. And then we also have a solid state amp with digital effects in it, like a Boss Katana. And the reason I like a Boss Katana is because it acts like a tube amp. When you push the transistors, they actually break up. Okay? So it's actually doing with electricity what a tube does. Differently, because it's not a tube, but it does it the same way. When you push it, the transistors go, they freak out and they make the sound. Your amp, your Fender GTX 100, is a digital modeler. A Class D power amp, the function of it is to basically just take the digital signal and amplify the signal to whatever volume you want through a speaker. But it does not, it's always clean. A Class D power amp is always clean. There's no pushing a transistor into compression. Okay. All it's doing is taking the digital signal and making it to where you can hear it, but it's completely clean. It doesn't, the point of it, I'm not saying they're all great at this, but the point of a Class D power amp is to just make sound. It is not to interact with the power stage of the amp, which is what a Katana does. So what you have, for lack of a better word, is a cheaper Kemper. So a Kemper is the same thing. It's all digital, and any compression or changing of the signal in any way is done digitally and then just made louder with a Class D power amp. A Katana is actually taking the signal, actually amplifying it, actually clipping it, actually compressing it, and sending it to the speaker. So it's a different way. It's a different way it works. Yeah. The other problem with the Fender amps is the resistors that have too low of a heat and amp rating. Yes. Yeah, there was a whole problem with those for a while, but people started modding them and everything was fine after that. They're great. I loved Blues Junior. I had one for a while. I gigged with it. I swore off the Fender digital stuff after playing the Mustang series. Holy crap, what a bad sound. So this, again, this is where we get into price points and expectations. Okay, so the Fender Mustang series is a very entry-level amplifier. It is meant for a very a person to be able to sit down and be like, I want to have lots of delay, I want to have lots of overdrive, I want to sound shreddy like Metal Zone, by just clicking a button and doing it. For the serious musician who's looking for proper tone and trying to understand their tone, that's not who it's for. The reason you were disappointed is because you probably have a more discerning ear than that amp has. Now, that's not to say that all the Fender stuff is bad, but that price point is not made for you. The Tone Master stuff is fantastic. It's a lot more expensive, but it's fantastic. But that's why. These low price digital amps are not bad. They're fantastic, actually. All of them. Even the Line 6 stuff, the cheap Line 6 stuff, all that stuff is great for the person that it's intended for. And if you're not the person that it's intended for, then you're probably not going to like it. Let's see. Okay. Where did you get those panels that on the wall? They are awesome. I got them on Amazon, actually. I'm going to do a video, probably a Friday video pretty soon, where we go through the new studio and the shop, and I'll put together a parts list of all the stuff that I used and what we did, because it made a huge difference. This was just an empty room in here, and it was super echoey and everything, and now it sounds great, and I'm really proud of it. It came out really nice. And then in the office in there where we make pickups, the whole setup in there is killer too. So I'll put together a whole video and we'll talk about that. Yeah. Okay. So now let's talk about pedals, because pedals have changed too. Back in the old days, everybody wanted a roto vibe or a univibe. Everybody wanted a fuzz. Everybody wanted a wah and like a tube screamer or a rat or, whatever, like the basic stuff, right? Why was this? This was because we used tube amps and because we were trying to manipulate the electricity. That's really, those analog pedals were because we had analog sound and we were really trying to just crush voltages and warp timing, and you know what I mean? Like that's what we did in the most elementary kind of sort of way. Um Chris says, anymore, pick your favorite guitar computer. They're all pretty good. No, that's really true. You know what it's going to come down to? It's going to be like Mac versus PC. You know, it's going to be Neural DSP versus Kemper versus Line 6. You know what I mean? You're either going to be a Line 6 guy or a Neural DSP guy or a Kemper guy. I'm a Kemper guy. I actually have another one coming. I ordered another one. But so here's the interesting thing is the pedals now that are popular are amps. So everybody's going to a digital side for all of their effects stuff. Whether that be a single stop, like HX Stomp, for example, that's got everything in it, which personally I don't like. I still like regular analog pedals. I think they're kind of fun, but they're not practical. You know what I mean? They're not, I don't want to drag all that stuff out every time I play. I'm just not into that. It's funny. One of the things that we talked about, and this is a decision I made, not one that Leslie made, but I told Leslie, I was like, when we build the new place, and we have the new room for shooting in, I don't want wires everywhere. I don't want guitar gear everywhere. I don't want pedals everywhere. I don't want it taking over my life again. Like that other room was just jam full of stuff. And I'm just like, I don't even know where my guitar pedals are right now. I have no idea. I think they're in a flight case in the garage. I don't even know. I'll go get them. I'll have them in a cabinet. I'll have them in a place. They'll be here. We'll be able to take them out and use them. But I just don't want wires and crap just everywhere, you know? And I think that's kind of the way everybody not everybody. I don't mean to speak too generally, but I think generally sort of a lot of people are like, yeah, I'm kind of over it. I just want something easy. And so when you start to look at the pedals that we're looking at, we've got all the Spark stuff. We've got the Tonex. We've got the Eventide H90, the Strymon Iridium, which is an IR loader for playing direct. The application and portability of all this digital stuff. We've also got the Universal Audio UA effects that have all of the there's like a Fender one and a AC31 and a like amps in a box. Amps in a box are like the new hotness for pedals. You could still have all your normal pedals and stuff, but the most popular things are the things that are doing away with amps, which is really interesting because it's making everything easier and it's making things more flexible. I've been using my Positive Grid stuff a ton lately because I can get so many different sounds out of it. And all this stuff is absolutely incredible and fun. Let me tell you what I did yesterday. I was literally trying to figure out, okay, so this room is like, I don't know, 14 by 14 or something. And my office is the same size. It's like 14 by 14 where we make pickups. But I have like a 10-foot foyer in between them. So when you come into my house, the front door, the foyer is there. And then I've got the studio on one side and I've got the office on the other side. And I told myself, I was like, well, I'll just bring my laptop in and I'll bring an amp in here and I'll just set it up and I was like, no, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to leave my computer on my desk. I have a 10-foot USB cable and I ran it out and I set a Positive Grid amp in the foyer at the end of that 10-foot USB cable. And then I ran a 10-foot Runway Audio guitar cable in here. And I played guitar. And I hit the space bar on the computer in the office. I walked in here. I sat down in front of the camera and I played guitar with the amp sitting in the foyer. And when I was done, I coiled up the cable. I grabbed the Positive Grid amp, stuck it underneath the toolbox in there because it's small enough to do that. And then I took the USB cable, coiled it up, and put it in the toolbox. I was done. No setup, no nothing. Great sound. That guitar sounded great through that thing yesterday, making that video. So it's funny because using this technology for what it was intended for. Do I want to go gig with that? Do I want to do pedal? Do I want to do pickup comparisons and really fine tune the tone that I'm going for when I'm designing a pickup with a Positive Grid Spark Mini? No, not really. But, because it's just it's not what it's for. But just to get a great sound for a 5-minute little, hey, is my guitar set up kind of good video, it was perfect. And it was really easy to do. And those things, you don't have to set any levels in the computer. It's all automatic. You set up your profiles ahead of time and stuff, which, it takes some time to do. But I've got a couple of really good sounding ones on there, and you just plug it and play, man. It was awesome. I was like, I'm going to do this. This is great. So, and as a result of that, I don't have cables and wires and crap all over my house. And I'm really proud of that. It's really cool. Anyway, I thought that was pretty neat. Super fun. Figure I'd give you a little insight into that. I don't like messing with menus or apps to control my pedals. Hence, I go for simple analog controls. I get that. I think over time, that is going to be, I don't want to sound disrespectful to anybody, but I think that's a thing that we're all going to have to learn at some point. You learn it. You learn it with your computer to send an email, right? And I know there are certain things that you want to stay 100% analog and not become. Where'd my pen go? Your hobbies, maybe you don't want them to become totally digital. I get that. I write with fountain pens, right? Just to keep the analog of it. That's why I like knives and guns and stuff, because there's nothing automatic about that, right? It's really basic, and it's mechanical in it. Writing with this pen and changing the ink, and very mechanical. And that's why I like having a Martin D28. Like I want it to be the basic. And so I get that, where some of your hobbies, you don't want them to be tainted by messing around with a bunch of technology and a bunch of stuff. I completely understand that. The thing is that I think if you're trying to be, here's the difference. If you're trying to be productive with it, if it becomes more of a hobby, and then it becomes a tool, and now you have to be productive with that thing, then it's easier for me to write with a ballpoint pen. It's easier for me to use my iPad to take notes, because then I can share with the cloud. I can do all the things, and I lose the analogness, and I have to learn how to use Evernote on my iPad, but it makes much more sense, and it's much more productive in that case. Same thing with, it's the same thing with the guitar stuff. I think the minute we change over to having to be productive with it and doing a job, playing a gig, having a clean stage, because that's what everybody wants now. Now it becomes part of the thing where it's more than just enjoying it to enjoy it. And then you kind of have to learn the tools and use the tools the way tools are meant to be used. But I also think that's why we have more than one thing, right? Like you'll have, I've got my carbon fiber acoustic guitars. The Martin doesn't go out anywhere. It stays home, right? Like that's mine, for me, for my analog, basic, super traditional, original D28. That's my thing. Now, if I want to go play a gig, or if I want to go do an open mic night, I'll grab one of my carbon fiber guitars, because I don't have to worry about it. And it's a great tool, and it sounds fantastic still. I don't knock it. It's not like it's less than my D28, but it means something different and it's a different kind of tool. So I think those of us that, if we can, chances are we will have some sort of easy digital play into a computer thing, but we'll still have some kind of loud amp that we can go out in our garage and bang on the weekends and still enjoy it, like drive the stick shift versus driving the family car with the automatic. I think that's the same thing. I think all of those things, but when it comes to being functional and actually getting things done, I think there's going to be a point, as you know, Rob, with all of what you do for work and what we all do for work these days, the digital stuff just takes over as a matter of productivity, because that's where the world is going, and we can't be left behind in that. People that ignore technology become annoying because they just get in the way. And I personally don't want to do that to somebody else. I don't want to be in the way of somebody else trying to do something. So I like to at least learn it. Even though I still have a buck 110 lockback knife and a fountain pen and a Martin D28 and, old school stuff too. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's really important. Let's see. Yeah, this is a great conversation. What interface do you use for your computer? There are some that are cheap, but it's hard to know what is good quality. So when I use an interface, I use a Focusrite. Focusrites have the best preamps. Well, for reasonable money. There are better ones, but you can get a Focusrite 2i2 for under $200 or right around there, and they're fantastic. The preamps are so good. Nowadays, I don't actually use an interface that often. I do have something new coming, though, that I cannot talk about yet. So that is a thing. I forgot, actually. I just now remember that. I have a thing coming that I cannot talk about yet. In this vein, but not really, kind of a multi-purpose tool. So I guess we'll just leave it at that. So stay tuned for that, about interfacey kind of stuff. But a lot of the new stuff has interface built in. So the Fender Tone Master Princeton has an XLR on the back. Oh yeah, I guess I have to use an interface for that. So the Princeton goes into the Focusrite. The Positive Grid stuff, you just plug it in with a USB-C cable. You don't need an interface. The Blackstar St. James, you can plug it straight in with a USB cable. There's a lot of amps that are just straight in with a USB cable. And then I just go into GarageBand. Everything you ever hear is just GarageBand. And partially it's because I don't care that much, because I'm literally just playing a couple of riffs. Partially it's also to keep everything basic and honest. We constantly get accused of messing with stuff to make it sound better than the competition and all that. And honestly, I do nothing. I do not even quantize volume. When we do this pickup versus that pickup, I do nothing. I put it in there, I play it, I export it, export song to disk, drop it on the video. I do not touch it. I don't do any post-production, nothing. And I do that on purpose so that I can say that, and so that we can be 100% transparent and honest about what you're hearing. So sometimes it's not perfect, but I do it on purpose because I want you to really hear what I hear in the headphones when I play it. And so we don't mess with a lot of that stuff. GarageBand is really good. It is. It's really, really good. Let's see. Not a complaint, just a heads up. Your screen is visible in your glasses when you look at the camera. Yeah, that's actually not the screen. It's the light up there, and I have this blue blocker stuff on my glasses, and it shows up. Let's see. One of the reasons I regret the PV Viper 3 is the menu screens, it's the scrolling and the layout, and even the color of the display. Yeah, I get that. I get that. I think one of the things I'm enjoying is some of these newer stuff, some of this newer stuff. Positive Grid stuff's really cool about it. Um, Kemper's really good about it, and the Line 6 stuff is really good about it. Where you can get on a computer, lay everything out once, export it to the device, and then not have to really touch anything after that. It can be a little option paralysis at times, but the one thing I will say is, first of all, the community is great because you can buy and also share free profiles with each other within those communities. So within the Positive Grid community, within the Line 6 community, within the Kemper community, and have everybody else do the work for you. Just pick stuff you like and then just play it that way. The mentality of setup with it. Chris Hendricks is here, and he could probably attest to this a little bit more. He plays a lot with this stuff, much more than I do, and I'm pretty sure he has played or does play in a praise and worship setting. Those guys are really, really proficient with this stuff because they're constantly exploring this stuff. And what I will say is, instead of sitting down with some sort of digital product and saying, okay, what does it do? What I would do is I would say, this is the sound I want to build. Think of it in analog terms. So I need a Marshall. I have a Les Paul and a Marshall, and I want this, this, and this, and this, and I want this reverb, and I want this delay. Think of it in analog terms and think of it as the goal tone that you're going for. Don't sit down and be like, what does this thing do? Because you will get lost. Because I promise you, whatever you want it to do, it will do. But you'll get lost in it and you'll struggle. Have a goal of what you're trying to get out of it. And even just write it down, like literally just block. Because like, for example, the Line 6 thing stuff is in blocks. The same thing with Positive Grid stuff. I know that for this sound, I want, for example, when I got my Mike McCready Strat, I was like, you know what? I'm going to come up with the Mike McCready sound. So I went and looked, and it's like, okay, it's a roto vibe, or a univibe. It's a delay. It's a reverb, and it's a Marshall, obviously. All right. So that's what it is. So I just went in there and I just built it, and I tweaked it a little, and I just left it alone. If you just sit, like I said, if you just sit down and say, let me see what I can do, you'll never get anywhere. You'll option paralysis, parameter paralysis is real. This is exactly what I do every week. And the more simple I can make it, I will. That's the other thing. Here's another thing. Instead of trying to get all of your sounds on one profile, create multiple profiles for each sound. And that sounds like it's more work, but it actually makes it simpler. So what I mean by that is, Chris said to make it simpler. So if you need a Marshall with a reverb, then just have a Marshall with a reverb. Don't have a Marshall with a reverb and a univibe and a this, and this, and this, and this, and then have to click in and out and on and off and in and out and on and off of all this stuff and, be tap dancing the whole time. Make a profile for your Marshall with your reverb. Make another profile with your Marshall, your reverb, and your univibe. You're not going to use them at the same time usually. Well, a lot of that stuff you don't. And then that makes it super easy. There's a lot of ways to make those things easier. Steve Sterlacci has a really good YouTube channel about making the transition into the digital stuff, because he's an old school tube dude. He's been playing for a long time. Um, but now that's his thing, and he's got experience with all the platforms, and he's a cool dude. I would definitely check him out. That would definitely be helpful to do that. I pick an amp sim and a pedal sim for the weekend, and I tweak them until I understand how they do other things. Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, one thing at a time. When I use a Kemper, I have 3 sounds. I have a Fender sound, I have a Vox AC30 sound, and I have a Marshall sound. That's it. And then I'm a very simple person anyway, so like I might have a phaser, I might have a little compression, I don't know. I usually only have 4 or 5 pedals anyway if I have a whole pedal board. So yeah. Now, this has been a fun conversation, because I feel like a lot of times when I bring up digital solutions for things, or bring up new technology, a lot of people really buck against it. But I feel like the crowd today, all of you today, have been really, really cool, just kind of learning about exploring, because it's true. We don't make tone like we used to. We just don't. We're in a different world, and trying to figure out a positive and constructive way to talk about it and figure it out is awesome. And I really appreciate y'all's input on this, and giving us ideas about how to make sense of it all. Um, yeah, I mean, I think it's great. I will say, I think we're going to be giving away a digital product this Thursday. I've been going through some of my gear that I've got laying around here that I either didn't review or I already reviewed and don't need. And what we're doing is, well, tune in Thursday. Somebody got a guitar last week. Just saying. I heard a lot of good things about the new Fender Modeler's user interface. That's what I heard too. Yeah. Awesome. You guys, this has been super fun. It is Tuesday, so therefore I have things I have to do this evening, but I appreciate you coming and hanging out with me. Thanks for coming and enjoying the new digs with me. This place is pretty cool. I'm pretty stoked about it. Probably later this week we will or maybe next week. I don't know. Let me get it dialed in a little bit more, and I'll show you around a little bit and show you what we did. If you want to see it now, you can go over to Patreon. I've been showing a bunch of stuff over on Patreon and for YouTube members. The other thing is, tomorrow we're going to have a live unboxing of a guitar that's been in a box for 4 days. It's been sitting over there for 4 days in the box, waiting for you and me to get it out of the box. So that is happening. So sounds good. We will see you, and we'll see you tomorrow.